where my story got really interesting was last June, I believe. My ACL tore, according to some surgeons, 80%, and other surgeons thought that based upon the MRI, it was 100%. Needless to say, I needed complete and total reconstructive surgery for my ACL, which has a 12-month recovery period. I was in complete agony. I could barely walk. I could barely eat. I could barely sleep. I was on crutches. It was not fun, and I wouldn't wish that kind of an experience on anybody. And when I was discussing the options that I had with the surgeons, they told me that they actually refused to do the surgery because I had a sensitized nervous system and because I had been in pain for 4 years prior to that on a continuous basis, that they felt that if they caused more trauma, they could instigate and insinuate or precipitate the development of something called chronic regional pain syndrome, which would then imply that I would be experiencing a reality where I'm kind of like on fire all the time, but you can't see it. And that is something that I really wanted to avoid, because it's difficult to get out of that, because you're not only dealing with, more physical trauma to the body with an actual surgery, and then to have to deal with all of the physical recovery that is required after that, but you're also dealing with, it's a chronic degenerative disease, essentially, that affects your nervous system. So, I decided to do some research, and I came across PBM, and I started to read the studies, and I found that there were hundreds and hundreds of documented cases and studies that demonstrated that PBM actually has the power and the ability to stimulate healing, increase tissue regeneration, and reduce pain and inflammation by actually cutting the signal. So one medical doctor told me basically it stops the cells that are doing bad stuff from doing bad stuff, and it inhibits that action, and it actually helps to stimulate all the good things that we want, like cellular regeneration, increasing your energy levels by actually cutting the pain signals that your brain receives, so that gives you more energy. And you can see how that would help to increase somebody's, this help them to decrease the psychological implications of being in a state of constant suffering and pain. So I started to utilize the light for 3 hours on a daily basis for 4 months. And I noticed that as I continued to utilize the light, my pain levels would go down, my energy levels would go up, I could get good sleep. When the doctors and the surgeons had basically told me to take some medications and do physio for 6 months and come back after those 6 months to see if I would be a good candidate for that surgery. And so I noticed all of these really phenomenal benefits and results through utilizing this light. And then I got another MRI, and the technician on the report said that it looks as though this individual may have had an ACL tear. Now, I completely recovered 100% from something that the doctors said I could never do. I essentially, in my own personal belief, I did the impossible with this light, with this technology.
Athletic injuries. There's basically every single pro sports team out there has some kind of a unit. In fact, an awful lot of them now, and Tom may address it, is he's got units that are treating the whole body. And this is what some of the sports teams are doing. And the other thing that's come out with this is you can improve performance. So they've done a study. They took the Norwegian volleyball team. I'll just give an example of one of the research articles. And what they had them do is they had them lift weights to the point of total fatigue. So as many repetitions lifting weights as they could do, they did it. Then half them went the next day and lifted weights again. Half them at the end of that first session, they put PBM on those muscles. Then they also, the second day, lifted weights. The ones that had the PBM after the first session, they actually could find they could lift 50% more and go longer the second day when they've had that. So it is, most sports teams are using this now for that as well.
So a question came in with regards to when there's a muscle tear and how would you treat it for a deeper muscle? So what I recommend is that a person would use the near infrared setting for, let's say, 75% of the time, and the red 660 for 25% of the time. And the idea being is that the near infrared will definitely reach the target and have the best effect that way. But adding the 660, there's different mechanisms for each wavelength. So some of them overlap, some of the mechanisms overlap so either wavelength could do. But there are, when we're talking of 660, it's more of a systemic effect. So things that happen in the bloodstream itself. So you don't have to go to that super depth.
Everybody, my name is Mark Bergen, and I was introduced to the light back in 2012 when I had a bucket handle tear of my meniscus playing baseball, and the light was given to me to try to get over some of the swelling and some of the discomfort that followed that injury. And so I applied the light every day for probably a good week and a bit, and the swelling went down and the inflammation was subsiding, and I was able to finally start walking again. And that really helped, especially when I was wearing a brace. After that, I did have surgery for it, so I actually used the palm light here throughout my recovery. And between this and a little bit of ice, they reduced the swelling significantly, and it just made everything feel a little bit easier to walk, and just with mobility, especially with still wearing a brace. It actually did a great job of just allowing me to be able to kind of get from A to B, because I was told by doctors that it could be something that would take you off your feet for quite some time. So them not knowing about this specific treatment, I used it as well. And when I went for checkups, they were very shocked to see how well I was recovering. So this, along with a lot of patience and everything that follows an injury like that, the light certainly did help with the recovery and a lot of the discomfort that I experienced with that particular injury.